Sam Bankman-Fried, as abhorrent and ridiculous as it is, he's actually just the tip of the iceberg.
Hey guys, welcome back to Library of Wealth. Today we have Bitcoin maximalist Max Keiser giving us an update on the collapse of FTX, as well as how the Sam Bankman-Fried debacle is playing out and what's next for the crypto market. Just yesterday, it was reported that SBF was arrested on charges of fraud, which is not surprising, seeing how the bankruptcy of FTX has played out over the past few weeks. Keiser talks about how Sam Bankman maneuvered his companies and defrauded users and investors, which inevitably SBF will now be held accountable. Let's listen to Max Keiser's latest interview as he talks about the similarities in the crypto market and how FTX is just the tip of the iceberg. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content we do here on this channel. Let's get right into the video.
I always say that if you took fraud out of the American economy, there would be nothing left. It's an economy run almost entirely on fraud. And fraud is celebrated. Like the movie The Wolf of Wall Street. People don't see that as a cautionary tale and they should avoid committing fraud. It's used as a playbook by this generation. Like, I'm going to steal whatever I can as fast as I can. That's the morals. That's the ethos you find. At this point, you should put the meme up of Zelensky at the laundromat. That's the appropriate meme at this point. It's pure money laundering.
It is, right?
No question. FTX is intimately involved, without question. The facts, the figures, the numbers are quite plain to see for anyone. They needed money to launder. Ukraine is where they launder it. Less than 30% of the weapons actually make it to the battlefield. It's a complete and utter disgusting incidence of the elites in this country ripping people off and calling it something, having something to do with an agenda. It's propaganda, okay? It's propaganda. Propaganda and money laundering, a kleptocracy. All these things are colliding, Tucker. And it's, on one hand, as somebody who's been in the industry for as long as I have, and as somebody who's almost like an aficionado of tracking all these various financial tricks and frauds over the years, because it's kind of interesting. It is, at the end of the day, kind of sad, because they are literally throwing the country under the bus. There's like $22 trillion in a floating pool of money that is managed by the 4 big accounting firms. The biggest accounting firms in the world manage a $22 trillion pool of capital that has never been taxed and will never get taxed, and that pool continues to grow.
And it just kind of floats around.
It floats around.
In an untaxable
From jurisdiction
space.
to that jurisdiction, through that loophole, through that. So the big 4 accounting firms are the biggest crooks. You know the names. You know who they are. The big 4.
Yeah.
They are the biggest financial crooks in the world, by far. And if you wanted to reform this whole system, you would start there. Those big 4 are where you would start. They're going to bypass the banking system. One of the reasons why they're doing this is because the banks, once again, need to be bailed out. But the feds are going to let the banks swing in the wind, and they're going to go directly to consumer, and you're going to get your money directly from the central bank. So the big banks on Wall Street who are looking for a bailout this time, they're going to be surprised. They're going to be left to rot. They're not going to be bailed out this time. The Fed's going to say, you're out. But that has been undermined by essentially the central banks, who invited people like Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX to play in a playground called free money, no accountability, and these fraudulent tokens that are being used to launder excessively without any repercussions whatsoever.
Keiser believes that Sam Bankman-Fried is now attempting to pretend he simply made a bad judgment call and that his inexperience is what led to the fall of FTX. Most people can see now that isn't the case, and he believes Sam will be held accountable for his role in the company's failure. It was only a matter of time before these failures resulted in a legal case against SBF.
People are grown up with the idea that banks are safe and institutions are safe and I don't need to worry about it. But we're at a point in history where you do need to worry about it, and banks are not safe. Same thing in the 2008 crisis. Same thing with the FTX crisis. They're banking on the feds bailing them out. Is this guy in jail, even though he's patently...
So you're nationalizing the risk and privatizing the upside.
Yeah, absolutely, but it's gone on for decades. And it gets worse and worse because, especially during an environment of the past 40 years where interest rates got cheaper and cheaper. So the basic fuel for financial fraud is cheap money.
Yes.
And the central bank, which is now, okay, reluctantly raising rates, they should have been raising rates years ago because that's the role of the central bank, price stability. And they needed to come in and proactively make sure that the malinvestment and the abuse was curtailed by making the cost of abuse and financial fraud high. That's what a higher interest rate does. If you have an idea like, oh, I'm Sam Bankman-Fried, I'm going to create this $32 billion financial fraud, and I'm going to use borrowed money, which, by the way, the cost of that borrowed money is nothing. You know, there's no incentive not to do that. And
Right.
if I mess up, I'm going to get bailed out. But if interest rates are at 5%, now suddenly you have a barrier to your fraud.
Right.
So that's what interest rates, one of the roles that interest rates can do is it creates a barrier to entry for fraudsters. But if you keep it always at zero and getting lower, you are inviting fraud. That's right. I say the big
And crushing inflation. I mean, if you're taking the value out of money, I mean.
Well, the inflation was building up over years. As you know, the inflation reporting underreports inflation by hedonic adjustments, by constantly substituting in the basket of CPI for hamburger for meat. They'll say, well, your laptop had the processor is twice as fast, so we're going to say that it's half as expensive in the CPI index. They do stuff like that to keep it really low. Also, the cost of living adjustment, they need to keep inflation low because the feds don't want to pay that higher. So they artificially keep the CPI number as low as they possibly can. So meanwhile, all that money, which is the actual inflation, is building up in the asset prices. So the stock market, the real estate market, the chateau, the chateaus in Switzerland market, all those things are up 15, 20% a year because of all that money that's being printed. How are they going to suddenly get out of this mess that they've created by lax financial oversight for 40 years? The Sam Bankman-Fried, as abhorrent and ridiculous as it is, he's actually just the tip of the iceberg.
There's going to be, in the wake of FTX, I know everyone's ignoring it in favor of all these other stories because the media doesn't want to face the fact they promoted this and they abetted it, and they should be ashamed of themselves. But at some point, this is going to be at the center of our attention again as the downstream effects become obvious and other companies fail because of FTX's failure. Will that failure be used to try and crush Bitcoin, do you think?
Well, it gets back to what I said at the very beginning, Tucker, and that is Bitcoin is designed to be attacked. The more you attack it, the stronger it gets, because the hashing algorithm that's at the core of the technology is increased by all of these folks trying to get into the system and attack the system, which makes it more secure, which makes the price go up. So we want it. We want people to attack Bitcoin. It attracts people attacking it.
But what if the U.S. government attacks Bitcoin by regulating the exchanges or by making it illegal to use it as currency?
It's the U.S. government's game to lose. The U.S. government has a choice. Either they can make Bitcoin legal tender and start stacking Bitcoin like the president of El Salvador, who's had an enormous Bitcoin-related gift, and his economy is now the shining city on the hill, or they can try to regulate Bitcoin and attack Bitcoin and be left out of the 21st century financial revolution that is Bitcoin. This is why, particularly during this FTX scandal, people that have money on these exchanges are taking them off the exchanges and putting them into self-custody. With like a Ledger cold storage wallet or a cold storage wallet. People have lots of money on these exchanges, and that's really, you don't want any money on those exchanges. You need to take personal delivery, if you will, of that money.
The SEC released a statement saying it had authorized charges relating to Mr. Bankman-Fried's violation of securities laws. Despite his arrest, he's set to testify at a U.S. House hearing on Tuesday. Even though the former CEO of FTX has been on a media tour the last few weeks, talking about the implosion of his crypto empire, this will be the first time the public has the chance to hear from SBF under oath. What do you guys think of Max Keiser's latest interview on Bitcoin, as well as the FTX collapse, and what's next for Sam Bankman-Fried? Comment down below. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. This is Library of Wealth. We'll see you in the next video.